Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session from Cost Center to Business Accelerator, the real ROI of Agentic AI. Thank you to everyone who is joining us live today. I can see that we have some people still coming in, but we do have a really packed session. And as we're at the top of the hour, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Marie Nayaka, and I am Customer Marketing Manager here at Gatekeeper. And joining me today will be our Director of Product and Customer Marketing, Daniel Barnes, as well as two of our customers. We have Tim Harvey, Procurement Manager from CompSource Mutual, and Luke Flanagan, Procurement Manager at Iomart. And both Tim and Luke will be joining us on a customer panel coming up shortly to share their real-world experiences of leveraging Gatekeeper's LuminIQ Agentic AI in their organizations. So for those of you who are joining live, if you have any questions throughout the course of this session, I encourage you to please ask those questions in the chat, and we'll either get to them during the Q&A section at the end of the session, or we'll follow up to all queries via email. Equally, to those of you who are watching on demand, please reach out to the Gatekeeper team. We can answer those questions, arrange workshopping, brainstorming strategy sessions with our team to really see how this agentic AI solution can fit within your particular organization. And we have a lot of best practice insights to share, but also while tailoring it really to your organization and your needs. So before we get going, here is a quick overview of what to expect over the next 45 minutes. In a moment, I'll hand over to Daniel Barnes, who will give a brief demonstration of LuminIQ agents within the Gatekeeper platform and give a roadmap of how we are developing our Lumin agents to help you accelerate contract and vendor processes, reduce costs, drive revenue, and free your teams from manual, repetitive work to focus on strategic initiatives. From there, we will jump straight into the customer panel, the main event with Tim and Luke, before we open the session up to Q&A. So with that, I'll hand over to Gatekeeper's Director of Product and Customer Marketing, Daniel Barnes. Daniel, over to you.
Thank you for having a look at this demo today. I'm incredibly excited. It's genuinely eye-opening, incredible, and I think it's fundamentally going to change the way in which we all work, whether it's in procurement, legal, finance, risk, infosec. Like, this has wide applications. So we're going to dive into an AI agent focused demo here. And we're actually going to land on this workflow. It's an agentic onboarding workflow. And if I was to just give you a very quick tour of this, someone in the business needs to raise a request for a new service, new goods. They need to go do some incredible work to move the business forward. They would typically do that via a form. I'm just going to access the form very quickly from within the workflow. It looks like this. They just add the third-party details, and all of this information is built in these sort of drop-down forms so that it makes it really easy for the user to complete, and they have to actually put a very detailed requirement in. All of this information combined will then be reviewed by the first agent. The agent here is an intake review agent. So if I was to click into Atlassian, we're just going to, because this information has already been pre-completed, we're just going to submit that. We're going to submit artisans, and this would be as though I'm a requester in the business. This has all been completed as well. You can just see here that we have a full detailed request in here. I'm going to hit submit, and we're also going to do this for Rhino Inc., which is a fictitious vendor. These all now move into the intake form phase. And right now, an agent is reviewing all of this work. It will take 10, 20, 30 seconds tops. Normally, sometimes it will go up to 3 minutes. And if I go into every single one of these and click history, you'll see here that the requests were actually approved for each and every single one of those vendors. So I just need to go into history here. You can see here, an artisan is the one that we're going to carry all the way through this process so that you can get a feel for it. So you can see here with artisan, we have a very comprehensive review. So we get an overarching summary, we get the what, we get the why, and we get the business driver. This is all really important stuff to understand. Like, does this match our internal procurement policy for requesting new vendors? Do we have the right information to then go and do effective due diligence on this supplier? And in this case, the answer was yes. We're also now at a phase where Gatekeeper has automatically pushed out an onboarding form to Artisan. So this is a due diligence questionnaire. We're actually using the SIG Lite questionnaire. This is something that costs thousands of pounds if you were to subscribe to it separately. With Gatekeeper, you get this included as a best practice template. I've just agentified this workflow somewhat, and this is a service that we can do for you. It's an incredible opportunity to standardize the way in which you onboard your vendors. But you can see here, there's a ton of different information. We're going to come back to this because in a moment, when Artisan submit this request, we're going to have another AI agent review all of this information. We've got like big documents in here as well. This would be, something that would take you and I, especially me, a long time to review. But I just want to go back to the start phase because we need to show something that happens if, unlike this situation, all three of those suppliers were approved. I want to show you what happens when one of them isn't approved, because that's just as important here. So here we have Acme Inc. They have a requirement to get stuff for the office. Someone internally is going to raise this request. This is a terrible request, but you'll be aware that every day, procurement, vendor management teams, supplier management teams, whatever your team is called, when you're having to deal with new requests to go get something for the business to help the business, not every request comes through how we would like it to. And there's often a time lag. So I'm just going to click submit here. There's often a time lag, right? Because we're busy. It's really hard for us to instantly jump on a request like this, which is absolutely terrible, right? But the beauty of having an AI agent that knows all of your policies, your process, it understands everything you need a good request to have. It can do the review for you, but more importantly, it can also give feedback to that requester. And that feedback then lets the requester instantly update their requirement, make it better, or just probably in this instance, show them that they're a million miles away. Like they don't have a business case, they have a terrible requirement. It's probably not going to do anything for them to try and remedy it at this time. They've probably got quite a lot of work to go do. But for those ones that are a little bit further along, it's going to be incredibly useful. So all of that was in real time just there. As you can see here, we've got a rejection. It's personalized to me. It tells me exactly what it saw. And I'm embodying the requester within the business here. So this is what I would receive. And we can see here exactly what's missing. Stuff for office doesn't identify what specific service is being procured. And there's no explanation of why this is needed. And we also highlighted this as a regulatory compliance requirement, but there's absolutely nothing around that. It's also vague. So it's just giving some pointers, like what specific service are Acme actually going to provide? What is the actual regulatory compliance requirement? And it just gives a little bit of like a framework of like, you need to go do these things better, resubmit, and then we'll kind of work from there. And that's the beauty of this process. It eradicates lapse time. It really pushes the process along. It takes you away from having to deal with the back and forth process, and we can just focus on the good stuff. Meanwhile, Artisan's agent review has completed, and we actually have two agents at work here. I'm just going to pause this one that you're seeing on screen because it worked almost too fast for me in this demo. But what we've got here is the InfoSec reviewer agent. This is effectively looking at all of the controls. It's looking at the SIG Lite questionnaire. And we can see here that we get an overarching assessment that it approves. We get the summary. So we get the assessment date, things like that. We get an executive summary. We get the risk profile, which looks at strengths, areas of note, which are a little bit weaker, and some risks that is called out. What I really like as a reviewer, and being someone who has reviewed hundreds of due diligence forms like this over the years manually, I like just this overarching top level view where we can see how good they are. So we've got strong, adequate, developing on ESG. We can see key observations for every single one. We've got some recommended contract provisions we should probably include in that. So a little bit around annual SOC 2 reports needed. right to audit, data processing agreement is likely needed. Some really good stuff there, and a little bit around the annual reassessment process, which we'll build into Gatekeeper and Agentify. So this level of due diligence that has been completed here is far better than something that I would be able to complete as a manual reviewer. But the simple truth is it's done it in a matter of minutes, and there's no elapsed time in between this. So as soon as anyone submits an initial request, we have our intake agent review that. As soon as the supplier completes their due diligence, their onboarding, it comes straight into an agent who does this review. And then it comes to me. I'm the human in the loop reviewer here, and I get to make the final decision. But then what we also have happening right now is a additional agent type is working on this. This is something we call a review agent. So this agent does not have the ability to approve or reject a workflow phase in Gatekeeper. Unlike this agent here, it approved it on the last phase. So it indicates here to us instantly that the AI agent thinks we should approve Atlassian, that we should approve Artisan. However, this agent, what it's doing really is providing us information to help us with our decision. And what I really like about this agent is it builds out risks that we can then directly add into our risk register. So all of the data fields match, and our agent is the one providing me with all of this information. I save a ton of time. I accelerate the time to business. So the time to start working with Artisan or any one of my suppliers or vendors is completely accelerated. And whilst all of this work was ongoing, I can be off doing more strategic work. That could be, getting involved in those very complex negotiations with suppliers. It could be understanding the entire risk position of our supply chain. It could be, working through areas like this, my contract and third party hub that I call it in Gatekeeper, where I'm starting to look through all of the data, understand where perhaps we've got a lot of spend per category, understanding where we might need to make some consolidation efforts and things like that. I can really start to focus on this work that's going to really impact the bottom line or add a lot of value to the organization, rather than being stuck looking and effectively ticking off forms, fields, and information, which as a human, I can perceive a lot of data, but an AI agent can do that far better than I can. So that's an overview of just one workflow in Gatekeeper. I think it's an incredibly strong use case. We can do this for contract reviews. The entire life cycle could be pre-signature, could be post-signature. We can do it for compliance documentation, so we can have it review like things like your insurance certificates, SOC 2, W8, W9 forms if you're in the US and you're looking to obtain those documents from your vendors. All of those checks and reviews can be completely automated and then sent through to one person, a team, just for their final sign-off. So thank you for having a look at this demo today. I'm incredibly excited. I'm really looking forward to taking a look at the questions that have been coming through as we've been demoing it. And we're just excited to get you started on your AI and, more importantly, your agentic AI journey with Gatekeeper.
Brilliant. Thank you, Daniel. And as I said earlier, for those of you who are tuning in live, please do ask any questions that you have in the chat and we will get to them at the end of the session. For those of you watching on demand, you can reach out to the Gatekeeper team and we can really help model out any of these scenarios and workshop them in your own organizations. So with that, we're over to the main event for today's webinar, which is our customer panel. And I'm joined, of course, by Tim Harvey, Procurement Manager at CompSource Mutual, and Luke Flanagan, Procurement Manager at Iomart. And with that, Tim and Luke, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Tim, we'll start with you. Please introduce yourself and CompSource Mutual.
CompSource Mutual Insurance Company. We're a workers' comp insurance company in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. We cover the entire state. The company was formerly a state agency for the better part of, 70 years or so. I don't quote me on the years, but we've been a corporation. We've been a company for the last 10 years. So we're a very old, brand new company, if you will. And I serve today as the procurement manager. we're an administrative function. Our customers are the internal departments who take care of the outside customers. So we kind of double down on service, kind of double down on, we try to keep, or I try to keep the weight off of those individual requesters who come to us who need things. You can imagine we have people out in the field, we have people in the business who need things, and that could be various. So as times change, needs change, and we just have to be flexible and figure out what those things are. So that kind of led us down this Gatekeeper journey, but I'll step back and let Luke introduce his company.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I'm Luke Flanagan. I lead group-wide procurement at Iomart. We're a leading secure cloud managed service provider specializing in cloud infrastructure, modern workplace solutions, and managed security services, supporting organizations with public, private, and hybrid cloud environments. We've got 12 fully owned data centers in the UK, 26 global points of presence, and a 24/7 security operations center. So security and resilience are really embedded into everything we deliver. My role really covers procurement strategy, supplier governance, and the digital transformation of what was historically a very legacy procurement function. Right now, the focus is on standardizing processes across a growing group of companies, improving visibility over spend and suppliers, and consolidating our supplier base. We run quite a lean procurement function, and we had a clear gap in our tech stack with no sort of dedicated contract management capability and no proper tooling for supplier onboarding and due diligence. So when we reviewed the market, we looked at contract management tools, we looked at third-party risk tools separately, and Gatekeeper really stood out because it offers both of these sort of functions in one single platform. And for us, it offered strong versions of both as well. So for us, that mattered. It was one implementation, one set of processes, and one adoption journey, rather than trying to land two platforms into one team, which was really, really helpful and really pragmatic, to be honest.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much. And Luke, I know that you are really much earlier on in your Gatekeeper and in your LuminIQ journey, and we'll hear from you shortly about your early wins and early momentum there. But Tim, I want to go to you first. So you CompSource Mutual were on our LuminIQ beta program back in summer. So you've really helped us and we've worked really closely together. Can you tell us a bit about headline level your approach to agentic AI, and then how you are utilizing this early wins in CompSource Mutual in your organization?
Okay, so in procurement and across the industry, across the years, I've been doing this for well over 20 years now. We've always kind of been in that moment of, boy, we really wish we could just see everything, see the big picture, see what's coming in, what's going out, what needs to go out. And we have never had that. And I say we, meaning the entire industry, because tools have come up, tools have been invented. Nothing's ever perfect. No software platform covers it all. Agentic AI is kind of like the answer to my dream over those 20 plus years of, man, we really need something to help the most basic person that just started working here that has no idea where to start. Where do I go? What do I do? How do I get X? And that person is kind of who I'm starting to focus on, because I feel like if I can answer that person's questions, then anybody in the company, all the way up to the CEO, can get what they need when they need it right away. And now with agentic AI, especially in the Gatekeeper area, I can do so in a compliant way. That person, many, many years, I've spent a lot of time educating staff on, you have to do it this way. You have to make this request in this way, and all those things. And what agentic AI does is take all of that away from the frontline person. They say what they need, and then we on the back end with the AI can satisfy that need. And as I said, in a compliant way, seamlessly. And that's what I'm most excited about carrying forward now, is our full focus has come out of data entry, paperwork, shuffling, filing, and has now focused on what does the business need. What our goals for this year are exactly that. As an administrative function, we have been tasked to help the frontline function, focus on the customer. And the absolute best way to do that is to stop teaching and start listening.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tim, actually, you said earlier, your phrasing was an old new company, and so I think you're very much in that incubator stage almost. I'm curious, is AI a wider business objective, or is it limited to your administrative functions? How are you approaching that overall? At CompSource Mutual at the moment.
Yeah. It is the focus is definitely on solutions, not problems, on results, not really how we get there. Because I think in the most honest way, people have always wanted to get there. Like both sides, the compliance people, the audit people, everybody has the same goal in mind. We want the result, but how we get there has been where we've always had differences of opinion. And to your point, the agents allow us to kind of work in the background. So now the agent knows what it needs and it knows where to get it. You, as the individual who needs it, doesn't necessarily need that. You just ask the agent the question. The agent says, bing, 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 yes, here you go. Here's the end result. In particular, on the contract side, the agent actually does a lot of what I have been doing as far as pulling out the highlights. Here's all the data you gave me. Here's what's most important to you according to what you told me. And that what's most important to you is the piece that has saved myself and my team the most time. Because now when my boss needs to know something, he simply pulls the contract. He looks at the LuminIQ, which we'll get more into that later, the LuminIQ insights that just give him the high level. I don't need every detail. I just need to know the answer to the question.
Thank you so much. And Tim, I know for those of you watching, we have a case study with CompSource that you can read, and I'll link to this in the session as well. And you've saved hundreds of hours with the LuminIQ insights already. So definitely the agentic and the AI capabilities really helping free teams away from that manual work and really enabling the wider business. But Luke, I want to come to you next, because as I said earlier, you're just out of implementation, so you've just gone live. So I know that it's really early days. Where are you seeing that early momentum in terms of the platform setting you up for success with AI and with our LuminIQ agents?
Yeah, in terms of sort of where we are very obviously early on in the journey, but we have got some early momentum there, mainly with the Gatekeeper platform as a whole. We're early on in deploying the agents. But the early momentum really came from sort of taking back control and centralizing our contracts. We're quite a large organization with a fragmented contract landscape. So simply getting everything into one place was a huge step forward for us. It immediately gave us visibility at group level, not just of what contracts we had, but also what was coming up for renewal. I think for the first time, we really had a clear picture of our renewal pipeline, and we're able to manage our renewals proactively and collaboratively with our suppliers and internal stakeholders, rather than reacting at the last minute, which I'm sure we're all very much used to doing in the past. So I think that shift alone really helped us move away from unknown auto renewals, reducing commercial risk, and allowing us to start focusing on driving tangible cost savings, which is very much a key piece for us and a lot of organizations at the moment. And alongside that, automating our supplier onboarding process and moving away from legacy Word documents and Excels and ridiculously long email threads has removed a huge amount of friction for our teams and our suppliers. But in terms of agents, we do have one currently deployed within our contract intake workflow, which provides us with a bit of a contract summary and a first pass against our standard contracting positions.
Yeah, and I'm curious because I know that you've just gone live, so you're just out of implementation, but you also have an agent, so you've been doing those two sets of work at once. Really, I'm curious, how did you decide where to point the agent? You said you've got a lean tech stack, but lots of jobs to be done. What was that thought process? And would you have done it differently, I suppose, in terms of pointing the agent in a different place?
The LuminIQ sort of came into play when we were sort of halfway through implementation, so it wasn't really something we thought about too much. And when it did come available to us, it was very much kid in a sweet shop. Like, what should we do? How should we apply it? I think the contract summary one just seemed like an obvious one for us to do, to sort of reduce some of the reliance on our legal team and myself in terms of reviewing contracts. But I think ultimately, after speaking to you and some of your other use cases with other clients, it was just a light bulb moment that actually the due diligence review phase for us, we're asking a lot of questions. We've reduced the question set down a little bit, so it's easy to manage between a small team. But actually, if we design an agent properly and build out the function and the prompt, we'll be able to ask better questions and find risk quicker, and allow that team, that small group of reviewers, to make the right actions and respond correctly much quicker.
And I love that kid in a sweet shop analogy. And I know that a lot of our customers and folks that we're speaking to have said exactly the same thing. And which brings me to experimentation, because this is, it's new capabilities for Gatekeeper that we're developing and iterating with our customers. But, there's a lot of scope to explore and play. So Tim, how are you approaching that within CompSource? What's the approach been there to how you're modifying the agents that you've already have in production?
As I always tend to do, I can start with one of my failures. I first pointed the first agent at our financial side. That's just one piece of everything we have to determine. But my thought process at the time was what could happen in the future. As it turned out, that didn't happen. So now I have this agent that does this really cool thing that we're not using yet. Not that we're not going to, because we are, especially since I have the agent. But the agent has the ability to, if we feed it the correct information, as somebody that just needs something in the company, I can come to you and I can say, I want to buy this software, and the agent is going to ask you, how much is it? What's the budget for it? So those are some of the determinations that it's capable of making. So if we have that information up front, which currently today we don't, but we will, the agent actually does make a determination based on where your budget is, how much your budget is left for the year. Here's this purchase, and it actually includes that in its recommendation back to you. We can match financial codes. You're identifying what you're buying as data entry software, and the agent will tell you didn't use the right code for that. It's actually supposed to be this. So that is incredibly cool. We're not there yet in maturity, but just the fact that we're able to is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, and you phrased that in your opening as a failure, but you do raise a really good point about data, and I know that this is iterative, and I want to really point out to those of you in the audience watching that this is very much something that happens in partnership with Gatekeeper. So we've got our agents. At the moment, they are applied to workflows that will expand in the future, but our solutions engineer team works with you to map out what you need. It's not just so much about the prompt itself, because the agent essentially works on a set of instructions in order to do X, Y, and Z, but it's about the data that feeds into that. And it's a partnership approach where we work with you to see exactly what you need in order to leverage the agents to their full capacity.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because you made me think of something. It's not necessarily a bad thing to discover that, hey, we don't have this information. It's really powerful to be able to say, because you have people who think that this is a problem, and we may have even gone back and forth in the past. Now I have all the data showing, these 30 requests have been rejected for the same reason. Hey, look at exactly what this reason is, and it's because we don't have such and such information, whatever that may be. So I'm saying that to say, to your point, when you set up these agents and you realize, wait a second, you kind of find the gaps in your process if there are any. You find the bottlenecks, and Yeah.
Yes.
So it's really a good process to go through.
And Luke, over to you. What is the future looking like for Iomart? What have you got in development in terms of agents at the moment?
Yeah, it's the supplier onboarding and due diligence process for us. I think there's probably the biggest opportunity for impact for an agent to have within our current processes. Our strategy is not just about time savings, it's about scale. As we grow as a business, we want the governance to be able to scale as well. So that supplier onboarding process is a great example of that challenge. As I mentioned earlier, the group of people who review those responses are relatively small. They make the decisions, ask follow-up questions, and really that's not their primary role within their day-to-day responsibilities. So our aim is to sort of design and deploy an agent alongside Gatekeeper that provides a first-pass review against our risk acceptance framework and provide recommendations. And hopefully, as that matures, we'll have some quantifiable results to relay back to our exec team. I think ultimately, though, with those agents, the final decisions stay with the people, but it removes a major bottleneck, allowing the review team to go deeper, spot risk earlier, without being constrained by the time it'll take to review a particular response from a supplier. I think what'll be really interesting is once that review time does stop being constrained, the quality of the decision making should completely improve. So yeah, it's a very, very exciting prospect.
Luke spoke about the risk, and that's actually one of the biggest things that we face. Our board routinely, quarterly, monthly, whatever, they vote on the biggest risk to the company, and cybersecurity and third-party risk is right there. It's kind of like 1A and 1B as opposed to 1 and 2. And Luke spoke about the onboarding, the due diligence upfront. Most companies, larger companies, I should say, these days have like these trust centers where they're giving you upfront. They're giving you a whole package of their security documents, their certificates, questionnaires they've had to answer for companies bigger than you, or the government in some cases, and it's just easier to employ an agent to filter through all of that information and according to whatever your company's risk appetite is, what's most important to you, is it data, is it whatever the service is that's being provided. That is the deployment of that agent is critical to kind of establish what you think is most risky, and then you can immediately go through all that documentation and spit out an answer and say, they look good, they might be a problem, red flag, that kind of thing. That's powerful for the executives making the decision.
Yeah, it's so powerful to be able to free up your own time and your own team, but also, executive time as well. But, Luke, you are earlier, as I keep saying, you're earlier in your journey. How are you communicating these early wins back to your executive leadership team?
I think in terms of communicating early benefits, when I talk to our CFO and leadership team, I'm not leading with AI, but more with an increased emphasis on control, visibility, and scalability. Procurement Iomart runs fairly lean, as I mentioned earlier, and as our group grows, the real risk isn't capability, it's bottlenecks, inconsistency, and things slipping through the cracks. So I think the early value we've really been able to demonstrate is around visibility and prevention, clearer oversight of suppliers and contracts, a more consistent application of our risk acceptance framework, and of course that leads to fewer surprises later in the life cycle, which is what we're aiming for. And really our sort of mission for the next 12 months and further ahead is about managing increasing complexity as the business grows, but without compromising on governance or slowing down that decision making. I think agentic capabilities support that by becoming embedded into our core procurement processes, removing manual effort as the limiting factor and allowing our small teams to apply judgment consistently but at scale. Hopefully, as these foundations begin to mature, it'll give us a structured way to identify new decision points where agents can add value and be deployed. Of course, not everywhere, because that'd be overkill, but absolutely where there's clear friction, risk, or dependency on a small number of people. that's really how we see agentic AI evolving within Iomart or within procurement specifically, not as one-off deployments, but as part of how procurement operates and scales over the next few years.
Yeah, I love all of that. And it's very much in line with our vision for the future and how we're developing the Gatekeeper platform to really help businesses to be ahead of that curve. But let's bring it back to today. So Tim, over to you. What are you able to do today that perhaps you weren't able to do before?
With these agents, I now have the power to go out and hire somebody that's never been in procurement before, that has no idea of what being a buyer even really means. But it can empower that person to, where most people have the most nerves is, I'm not sure what's risky and what's not. I don't want to bring something into the company and all of a sudden it was a problem. The agent can kind of take some of that pressure off of that person, where they don't have to come in and read an encyclopedia of things to learn how to do their job. They can just sort of follow the path, follow the procedures, and get comfortable faster, which is annoying. I told you how much things change. That's to not have to teach and reteach, and to, you can just bring somebody in almost off the street and say, here's your job. And within a few weeks now, as opposed to a few years, they can get on their feet much faster. And I think that's the biggest thing. So not only experience, but knowledge, it just saves so much. And it's such a powerful tool. I as you can tell, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, what you've shared there, is once again very much in line with Gatekeeper's vision for how we want to enable businesses and enable the industry going forward. But, in terms of CompSource on a day-to-day level, I know that you've freed up so much you've got a really small team and you've freed up so much of their capacity. What are they working on now in terms of strategic initiatives? And presumably you've had a backlog in terms of the ways that you want to support the wider business. So what are you pointing your sights on next?
Backlog is a good point. We've spent so much time catching up, that we crossed over from our old system into this new system. And what I'm seeing for myself and my team is the ability to be more responsive, not so stagnant and caught up in our rules and our, it's got to be this way, it's got to be that way. Now, all of a sudden, we are more clear-headed as far as our decision-making and our where the risks are. Representing an insurance company, not all risk is bad risk. Some of that risk we actually make profit off of. So that's the next iteration for me personally, for the procurement team and internally, is copying what's happening for, like, underwriters, for example. They go out and they go get business, and some of that business is more risky than others. It's kind of the same in this world, and who our suppliers are, and some risk you don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, but some risk could be valuable to the company. And that word right there is where I'm at now. Now, instead of data processing, now we're figuring out what's valuable to the company. What is the contract actually worth to the bottom line? Because we're about profit. We're not a government agency. We're making money. So where can I cut costs? But not just that. Where am I actually making money by deploying these specific third parties and what they bring to the company?
I love that. And in the opportunities, in the moments that this presents, and it really enables you to be deeply curious about your role, and really sets you up for much more exciting work, thinking about, what's next, yeah.
I was thinking about that very thing, is like, what's next? Because we don't even have this fully, implemented across the business, and I'm already on the next thing because I know it's working. All we have to do is expand it to continue to work in more areas. But I'm already on the next iteration of this entire thing, is not only where are the risks, what's risky to the business, but now it's starting to turn into, what does a profile of a third party look like that we want to work with? Now, all of a sudden, the tool becomes, I have this, or I don't have it yet, but I will have this composite score of, here are all these areas that we've highlighted that we say are the most important. Now, all of a sudden, I can go looking for people who fit the criteria, which, as I mentioned earlier, part of our business is just that, is evaluating companies out there in the world, I'm going to be able to develop a profile of, they have these things in the areas of risk, they have these things in the area of finance, and so on and so forth. And I'm incredibly excited about that. And I never would have got here still buried in paperwork.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that that's definitely a use case that we'll be following closely with you and hopefully share with the wider audience at a later date. So Luke, I want to come back to you. For those businesses who are just looking to start out on their journey with agentic AI, perhaps with Gatekeeper, but what advice would you give them about, how and where to start?
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably start with the problem, not the technology. If you can't really clearly articulate the decision or the bottleneck you're looking to improve with an agent specifically, then the agent will just add noise to that process. So become an expert in that particular problem, understand the intricacies of the process, and hopefully you'll be able to design the right solution and build the right prompts to get through that. I think secondly, embedding AI and agents where people already work. I think adoption follows existing habits. People trust a tool that naturally fits into their day, not ones that ask them to work differently or circumvent something that they're used to. So if it feels like an extra step, it might not stick. And I think finally, be honest about where you are in terms of maturity. I think early value comes from learning and building trust, not from getting it right from day one. So start with a narrow, well-governed use case, prove the value, and let confidence grow over time. But like Tim says, very excited to see the prospect of deploying more agents. I feel like a lot of the things we've always wanted to do as procurement professionals has been, a nice to have a long-term objective. But now these are actually tangible opportunities that we can do because a lot of the manual hardship labor has been taken away from us, allowing us to focus on becoming strategic enablers for the business, which is where procurement really lies within organizations.
Thank you so much. And Tim, over to you. I'm going to ask you the same question. What advice would you give for folks who are just starting out on this journey?
But I think as far as advice goes, I absolutely agree with what Luke said. And I that's my philosophy, period, in my entire career, is start with the problem. What problem are we trying to solve? What result are we trying to get to? Start with the end in mind, and then back it up from there. And it is quite simple, or it can be. A lot of times I think we complicate things, and most of my advocacy in this role is bringing the two worlds together. There's the business that's trying to make things happen, trying to make money, and then there's compliance, trying to do it right and trying to appease the auditors and whoever else. Those two things don't have to be opposed to each other. Bringing that together is my purpose, I believe, as a procurement manager. If we make the software, in this case, the tool, be compliant, my people on the ground, on the front, they're not trying to do anything out of sorts. They're not trying to break the rules. They're just trying to get it done. They are desperate. They're being pressed. They're under deadlines, whatever. If the tool can point them in the right direction right away, quickly, easily, easy to understand, they're going to use it. That's the path of least resistance at that point. There's no excuse to go outside the rules when the right way is the easiest way. So this tool is helping me do that, and I believe can help any company do the same thing.
Wow, thank you. And what a note to end on, the path of least resistance, where there's no excuse to go outside the rules when the right way is the easy way. So thank you both so much. Thank you, Tim and Luke, for your time today. As I mentioned earlier, we have a in-depth look at CompSource about those agents that you've got running over on our website, a case study over there. And Luke will be following your journey closely as well as you ramp up with your agentic AI journey with Gatekeeper. And with that, we are almost at the end of today's session. So thank you to everyone that has joined us live, and of course to those of you watching on demand as well. We hope that you found the insights, particularly from our customers, Luke and Tim, really valuable to bring back to your organization. I'll shortly be handing over to Daniel and the Gatekeeper team to run our live Q&A. Rest assured that if you have asked any questions throughout the course of this webinar, we will do our best to answer them in the time that we have available. But if not, we'll follow up up with each of you individually. And of course, to all of you watching, feel free to reach out to the Gatekeeper team at any time, and we can run strategy and workshop sessions of how we can, and model out how we can leverage LuminIQ's Agentic AI in your organizations. So that is it from me. Once again, thank you for your time. Daniel, over to you.
Hey everyone, welcome to this Q&A section of the webinar. So we've got a number of questions that I'm more than happy to run through. We've got a couple of questions that were not answered just now during the main session. Verity has just sent through a new question as well. So I'm just going to go through these in as much detail as fast as possible so that we can fit those in within the next sort of 10 minutes or so. So we had a question which was around where we can deploy agents. So whether they can only work on certain requests over a certain value or categories or anything like that. And I just wanted to quickly break down how these agents work. They are deployed on your workflows. So we will assign an agent to a dedicated workflow phase. And in our update in February, there will be a dedicated section within Form Access. So this is really for the administrators of workflows. You'll just be able to drop in any one of the agents that you have within your Gatekeeper environment, and they will be able to perform tasks only on that specific workflow phase. Still, the way it works today, we're just making that access a little bit clearer. So in short, the answer is yes. Whatever that phase is responsible for, whatever transition rules you have in there, whatever the tasks are that you need to do on that phase, the agent will pick that up and do the tasks. We also give it instructions, and those instructions can be based on your internal policies, ways of working, whatever you need really, and we work with you to figure out what that agent needs to do. We test it, we run it on that specific phase or multiple phases depending on what you need, and the agents do incredible stuff. I've been blown away by them. It's been kind of wonderful being an ex-practitioner and getting to play around with all these agents over the last year. So if you have any more questions about how to sort of deploy them specifically in workflows, please just add that into the Q&A. We had a second question, which was all about what are the different types of agents that we have at Gatekeeper. And right now we have a ridiculous number, and all of this is available right now in app. It depends on your plan, but your account directors will be able to advise you on this, and we'll follow up with information about this. But all of these AI agents, everything we've shown you today, everything we've talked about today is already available for you. The second question that really caught my eye, I think it was from Emma, which was about what are all these, what types of agents do we have? What are the different kinds of agents? And the agents that we have here are, well, they do a couple of things. We have a review agent. So this is an agent that's deployed on a workflow phase, and it reviews all the information, all the documents, anything related to that specific phase. And it can give you things like executive summaries, briefings. It can write emails for you. It can do all sorts of wonderful things around any task from contract and third-party management. One of my favorite examples of this one is I use it to build out all of our risks. So it reviews all the answers based on due diligence that come in, and it sends it over to the agent. The agent reviews it all and then creates all of the risks. And we can just add those to the risk register. So it's really, really good for that. Then we have another agent that is an approval agent. So this is an agent that can actually reject or approve specific tasks on the workflow. So it could be that it reviews due diligence and says, hey, this vendor matches all of your internal requirements. We're going to approve it and move it over to another phase. And we typically do that to a human in the loop reviewer. So that would be someone like a procurement manager, a vendor manager, something like that. So I find it really, really quite amazing that we have these agents doing these kind of tasks. Harry's just asked about the contract management use cases as well. And there's some really great ones. So in terms of like an end-to-end contract review process, we've got a number of agents that we like to deploy. And actually, like I'm just deploying them right now at Gatekeeper for Gatekeeper, which is kind of wonderful. So we have an agent that can review all initial contract requests and do the triaging. We also have AI agents that can review the entirety of a contract in accordance with any contractual playbooks, contractual standards, make all of the reviews, and even say, hey, in clause 11B, this liability provision isn't acceptable and you probably want to change it to this. So it's a really intelligent agent, and you can then use it to go redline better. And we also have some redline partners with Legal One and DocJuris that we partner closely with, depending on your use case. But we also have after the signature agents. So agents that can work around all of your contractual obligations, your SLAs. We can deploy them in any kind of workflow where you have those kind of post-signature contract management activities. It could be around performance. So there is just so much potential here for agents. And they can either be review agents, so they just give you information or do something for you, or like they're effectively prepping work for you. I always think of it as sort of like an analyst that's working for me, maybe a more junior colleague who's doing a lot of the busy work and I'm just making the final call. Or the approval agent, where we'll approve or reject, but we always loop it back to a human reviewer. So you never offload the judgment call around that. And just in a few weeks' time, we're actually updating our agent capability and bringing out a new agent that will also update all of your workflow forms for you. And I think to Harriet's question, there's a really good contract use case that I've already got to play around with, which is wonderful. Say we extract all of the clause data and contract data at the start of a contract workflow using Lumin Intake. So that's just where you drag and drop a contract into the workflow or to a new request, or you email the contract into Gatekeeper. Our AI extracts all of the key metadata from the contract in seconds. You negotiate it, and then based on that negotiation, a lot of those data points often change. You may have done a different limit of liability clause, you may have different insurance provisions, you may have a different contract value. And this agent will look at all of that information, look at all of the negotiations that's happened and update it so you always have the latest information in your workflow, and then commit it to your contract repository, which we call the vault. So it's really going to be amazing because we're going to lose all of this, I would say, like really tedious, arduous, boring work around managing our contracts, suppliers. That same example could also work if you want to deploy an agent and review insurance certificates, SOC 2, Type 2 reports, and things like that, and extract information from it. So it is incredible. Harriet's also just asking a question here. Would it be possible to ask Lumin to identify all indemnity clauses across a group of contracts? Absolutely. So we do it typically by contract, but then we can just create saved views with that specific data point showing. So you could see all of the indemnity clauses in one place, and then you would just save the view of it being like indemnity clauses within your contract base. So super straightforward to do. Many of our customers are already extracting indemnity provisions, things like that. So yeah, if you need any help with that, more than happy to personally help you or get someone to come to you how to do that. I also just want to raise, we've only got a few more minutes. There was some a couple of really good questions around security that came through, and I just really want to reiterate this. So we work with AWS Bedrock, and that gives us data sovereignty across all of our regions. So you already have a data center applied to your region, whether it's North America, Canada, APAC, EMEA. You have specific data centers in those regions that support all of your data sovereignty. We don't pass any of this information out of your Gatekeeper tenant to any model. No data leaves your Gatekeeper environment. It's all your data, all your proprietary information, confidential information, commercially sensitive information. That's all yours. It stays there, and none of it is used to train the models. It's something that we heavily believe in. We never want to use any of that data in any way. So that is a big one I just wanted to call out there. I'm just seeing here, we've got a question. I think Emma has just raised a question. Can agents in one workflow trigger another workflow based on specific criteria should it need to. And like the short answer is like yes and no, in the sense that the agents will do work and that can impact the data in a workflow card. And we just use that, right, to trigger the other workflows. So this is this concept of parallel workflows. So really the agents sit on top of the workflow. So that capability is already in Gatekeeper. Like if a data point changes, we can trigger different workflows to start. Maybe I'll give you an example of what we're doing at Gatekeeper. We've got a new vendor onboarding process that we're rolling out. And depending on an answer, we may have a data process and impact assessment process that starts. And we have an agent then that reviews all the responses collated in the other workflow. So we can tie all of these different workflows together already in Gatekeeper, but we can have agents do all of the work as of when new cards are raised in these workflows. I'm just seeing here if we've got any more questions. We've got a couple minutes here. Okay, so there was a question here from Verity. Are the AI agents predetermined by Gatekeeper, or would we as a client need to determine them? The answer is both. We have a number of out-of-the-box agents. So this might be intake agents. We have a SIG-like questionnaire. So this is a vendor due diligence form. That's the one that was in the demo today. We have an agent that already works out the box. You can deploy it if you're using the SIG-like questionnaire, which is one of our best practice workflows. So we have probably up to 50 out-of-the-box AI agents right now that we can use, but we can also use them to tailor to your specific requirements, or we just build with you. So typically there's like a 2-week process of scoping, building, iterating, figuring that out. We don't let, at the moment, our customers do any of the agent building themselves. We want to make sure that you are getting the best experience, and we're bringing all of the expertise we have in-house across all your workflows and everything to give you the best experience possible. And I'm just seeing another question. Yes, Emma, I can provide you some insights on the DPIA process as well. Raquel Reyes just asked about, can an agent edit custom fields? The agent that is dropping in 3 weeks, let's call it, give or take, yes, it can update any field that is in a workflow card. And we're really excited by it, especially on custom data fields. I think we're going to be able to do such incredible things, and you'll be able to free up your time so much more than completing forms within Gatekeeper. Okay, I think that's all we have time for today. I just want to say thank you to everyone that has joined us live, everyone that's joining us on demand, really appreciate it. For anyone that is watching this on demand, we will absolutely answer any questions. Just send those over to your account manager. If you're not a customer with Gatekeeper, just reach out to us and we can answer any of these questions. And hopefully we'll see you really again pretty soon for another